Hello and welcome to round 2 of our good old Worship Wednesday podcast. So glad that you guys could make it on the screen. And before we go any further, this is a new trend we're doing every week. So if this is something you're interested in, want to continue watching, just subscribe and like the video if you'd like to like. But we're gonna jump right in. This week we actually have a couple pretty decent songs. All Hail King Jesus, Awake My Soul, Back to Life, Break Every Chain, Throwing It Back, and last one would be Build My Life. So first off, if you're your first time viewer of our Worship Wednesday podcast, ironically, we are a collective from Southern California, and inevitably, a lot of us hang out at the same church. And there's a handful of different musicians, singers, worship leaders who inevitably want to take their worship to another level, right? So, as a fellow peer of theirs, I've always felt led and I feel gifted in the art of basically getting certain types of people together who want to do a team effort, and with the ultimate result of just worshiping together, but doing it in an elevated way where we're actually having a higher standard for ourselves and each other. So with that being said, we take every song as seriously as we can, depending on our level of experience or our education, our knowledge of music, all that good stuff. And so because of that, we've created this time where we can get together every week, go through like 4 or 5 songs. They could be super old, they could be super new, they could be originals even. But the goal is for each and every one to not only progress in their own worship, but when we come back to church, even if you're in Southern California or you're in another state, another country, the idea is that you'll be able to take some of our pointers, our conversations, and even apply it to your own worship or to your own church. And so, that's basically what we've been doing so far. And we're still in the A's, as you can see. We're going in alphabetical order to our master list of songs that we have at our church and our main service, which is roughly 65 to 70 songs at a time in like a 6-month span. So it seems like a lot, sounds like a lot, I know. But the whole point of it is for each and everybody to just learn how to learn songs faster. Learn a song as fast as you physically can, chart it out, and be able to literally use it in your worship set on a Sunday within a couple days. And because that's how fast-paced worship can be, it's one of those talents that you can naturally grow into it if you just keep doing worship over and over again over the course of years in many different ministries. But for us here, we don't really have the luxury of getting that much experience in, let's say, a full-time musician or singer might have. So this is kind of like a supplemental aspect of that. And I've had the previous opportunities to where I was able to make a living full time just playing music, and it obviously ended up going into the worship world. So I get to share my experiences with you guys, and hopefully that will just progress everybody in the conversation and we can have a good time doing it. So with that being said, we're going to go up to All Hail King Jesus. I know this is a pretty newer song, at least for our church. And the first thing that I really recognized in this song, and I do have a couple notes just written down, it's a very studio kind of song to me. It seems like a good like offering song. So something that you would do inevitably like for your tithing and or just like a side worship moment versus like opener of a worship service, or even I've seen people do it, obviously at our church even. They do this song the way it's written, and it's not a bad thing. But like, even for example, the intro, right? Super long. You don't have to do the intros to every song you play, but that was just one thing I noticed right away. I was like, okay, we have to wait like 30-45 seconds for the song to actually start the progression before we can really start learning the song. But it also made me think of it being like a really good like duet song. So for example, if you've got a girl and a guy and they've been highlighted in the worship, normally, then to have them come together for an offering piece, a tithing piece, could be super, you know, good. Could be not only like an emotional experience, but especially a tithing moment. If you're sitting there and you're actually worshiping God with your tithe and your offering, and to hear a song like this and to be reminded of why we are giving and why and what God has done and what Jesus will do in your life, that just resonates with me. But to get to the musical side of it all, one thing you might have noticed in the pre-chorus, the first pre-chorus, there's actually a section, I believe it's the first half, where it only goes basically 3 times through instead of 4 times. So if we had like a 1, 2, 3, 4, 2, 2, 3, 4, 3, 2, 3, 4, 1, that's when it actually then repeats versus giving it another bar. So sometimes it can trip you up. Doesn't always do that. But another cool thing, in the second verse, we have this really cool bass thing. Now, normally when you're playing bass, you do add like a 5, you do add a 3, depending on where you are in the scale or what chord you're on. But what was cool about this was, even though the chords just say 1, 6, 5, 4, the bass player was playing 1, 3, 6, 1, 5, 2, 4. So he was just adding these, I almost thought of them as just 1s and 5s. Like, I'm playing the 1 note of the chord, then I'm going to the 5, 1 note of the next chord, 5, that chord, and so on and so forth. But after listening to it and going like, actually, you know what? It's not as obvious of the change. So I actually had to sit down and I had to listen and figure out the notes. But yeah, so for the 1, it goes to the 3, up to the 3, to the 6. Then from the 6, it goes back to the 1, but then to the 5, which is technically like a 5-1 kind of thing anyways. And then the last one, it goes actually over to the 2 and then lands on the 4 to end the section. But the intro to the bridge, I wrote a note there. I'm trying to remember what that was. I can't remember, but that's okay. But the craziest thing, this song has 3 verses, doesn't it? Let's see. 1, 2, and oh no, it doesn't. I thought it had 3. But yeah, let's see. And then the third one I said sounds like a bridge. Maybe it was the bridge. Maybe they put bridge, but it sounds like the verse. Well, we could actually listen to it. Why not? So here's that long intro. And then we get to, the chorus. Now I remember, it's 3 choruses. 3 choruses. So chorus 1, we have 1, 1, 1 over 3, 6 minor 4, 1 over 3, 5. We go over here, we have 6 minor to the 4, which is very different. 1, 5, 1, 3. That's similar. It's kind of like the bass idea, right? 6 to 4, 1 over 3, 2, then the 4. So that was a change. Instead of going to the 5, which kind of resolves a progression or a section, you've got the 4, which is more enticing to keep going, to lead you to another section, or it's a good landing chord too for anybody who isn't familiar with the four chord of a song. But last but not least, the original is actually in C, which is a decent decent key to play in. There's no sharps, there's no flats. It's all the white keys on the keyboard, right? But then at our church, we actually ended up playing it in either E, which is another common, at least for guitar, it's a more common key to play in on the instrument. There's a lot of easier chords to play, but then we also do it in D flat. So depending on your instrument, whether it's guitar, bass, even, if you're tuned to even low D on a bass guitar or even a regular guitar, it's in D flat at that point. So unless you have another guitar that's tuned down a half step, or if you're lucky enough to have a 5-string bass, I should say, then you'll obviously be able to play those low notes without any issues. But just something to be mindful of, because at the end of the day, we always have to be thinking one step ahead of where the worship might go. And if the key does change to a flat or a sharp key, we have to know, okay, well, if I'm going to move up, if there's any open strings that I need, I'm going to have to capo for like a guitar player, or if it's a bass player, the worst case scenario is instead of playing a low note for the root, like let's say for example, D flat, if you're on a regular 4-string bass, you just might have to play the octave higher. So it's not at the end of the world, but it does make you think, okay, I got to be aware of that. So let's get to a fun one that I really, really enjoy. And that is Awake My Soul. Now, right away, I told myself I am 100% going to just play the vocals for a small section of this song, because at the end of the day, Tasha is so good at singing. So it's like you have to just give it to her for a little bit. Just be like, oh gosh, so good. It blesses you, right? Anything that blesses you, man, share it because it's worth sharing. But yeah, let's go to so at our church, we use this thing that enables you to pull the different instruments out of a song. It's kind of become mainstream. It's kind of become built into most softwares now, and so that includes Logic, which is what I use on this iPad. And so yeah, we're able to just pull out the stem, which just means you pull out just the vocals of a song, and you're able to just listen to that without any other instrumentation. We do the same thing with drums. We have an instrumental. There's one that says right here, it says guitar and keys plus the drums, just a little bit of drums just to make sure you can hear the time. And then the last one would be the bass and the drums. So yeah, I'm just gonna, before we go any further, I'm just gonna scroll over to Tasha's part and let it bless us. This is gonna be, I believe, the second verse. So I'm gonna go back just a little bit. So I think this is the build out of the first chorus. Let's see. Sing his praise aloud. Here she comes. Hallelujah. So good. There is a sound that changes things, the sound of his people on their knees. Awake up, you slumbering, it's time to worship him. Awake my soul. So good. And then even at the end too, one thing that I really appreciate is the fact that Brooke, the other singer on this song, she wrote the whole song. So it's like, to have Tasha, Cobbs, and Brooke on the same track. And this is like the radio version, right? So I get it. It's supposed to be more condensed. It's supposed to be, shorter sections and just straight to the point. But man, you could really just elaborate on some of these sections and just let people worship, and it's crazy because she can worship really well. And if you have any singer at your church that can elaborate on her worship or his worship. Uh, you can't keep that bottled up. You got to let people do what they're going to do for the Lord. So anyways, I just thought it was definitely worth listening to. Let's listen to the last section.
Wake my soul and sing his praise aloud, sing his praise aloud. Oh, wake my soul and sing his praise aloud, sing his praise aloud.
So good. Actually makes me think too, like it'd be kind of interesting if you put a click to just the vocals and then you just played to it, how that could actually give you a lot of ideas, either acoustically, like if you do acoustic worship at your church, or just for a special service. It's almost like it reminds me of if there was like a DJ just playing vocal tracks, right? And then they had like a real band playing the other instruments. But man, what a good song. I don't really have any crazy pointers for the actual song. It's pretty straightforward, and the chords look pretty normal. Granted, it's in F, so you've got at least one flat, right? The B flat. So not too horrible. Ironically, for our church too, and our kids ministry, we we pride ourselves in letting that be a place that the next generation can be built up, not only spiritually, right? People and kids in the congregation, but also on stage. So, we have some of our youth that play in the band. And the way we can do that is because we not only have songs that are basically like four chords, but another thing is I try to keep songs either in C, let's say for songs anywhere from E all the way down to like C or B. But then we try to keep everything as well in the key of F. So, and that's also a way that you can, if you're playing in C, you can land on the F, and that could be your one chord at the end of the 1 to 4, the four chord that I was talking about earlier. And then it being an F, yeah, you've got a B flat, and you've got some other, the F chord alone on a guitar is so dumb to play. So you always have to modify and make it sound better or easier to play, either with a capo or just a different voicing. But yeah, so the fact that this one's an F, I mean, I might actually be considering playing this song in our kids ministry, because even if we just did the chorus, 1 4 5 6 4 5, not too crazy. But yeah, keeping songs in those two types of keys, C and F, is actually really powerful for people that are trying to learn. And if you had this in a main service, you could probably have some of your volunteers play it without skipping a beat. So let's go to the next one. We got Back to Life. Good old Bethel. This one's cool because originals in in B, but we're playing it in C, and that's actually a better key for, like I said, guitar, piano, bass too. Drummers, they can play in any key you want, which is awesome. Okay, so Back to Life, and my notes. I guess I'm going to pick C, but yeah, let me look at my notes really quick. So it starts with the chorus, which is actually interesting, right? It's a great teaching moment if you're in a situation where you want to teach your congregation a song, and obviously if a song starts with the chorus, that's a really easy way to start. But yeah, so that's not the most common thing that happens with worship songs, but when it does, it's, like I said, it's a nice kind of like teaching moment. The first half and the end of the second chorus is only 3 sets of 4. So that same situation that we were talking about earlier with what was it, the first song, All Hail King Jesus. And so that being said, same type of deal. 1 2 3 4, 2 2 3 4, 3 2 3 4 1. Phil Wickham actually does that most often in his verses as well. And if you can do it right musically, people won't really notice. But as a musician or even a singer, you do want to be mindful of those things because you just don't want to get tripped up, especially if you're leading it. I've found that a lot of, either the next generation or just people that don't have enough experience in a worship environment, they'll almost like look around waiting for others to communicate to them that they're going to now switch and it's okay. And when you're confident about your worship, it's there's no hesitation. You go and you do it, and then worst case scenario, the band doesn't go with you, and then you just kind of ad lib it really quick and then come in. But to wait and looking and waiting, like, if I'm talking to the worship leaders here, that's kind of what we're there to do, is point the band in the right direction, and even giving cues, having signals, or just even looks at the MD, the music director, whoever that might be, is really kind of, it's important. But just recognizing, hey, this section's a little bit shorter than normal. So the normal rule of, everything is either 2 times or 4 times doesn't really apply in that regard. I actually heard a cool quote today from an artist. His name's Kiefer, not to be confused with Kiefer Sutherland, but his name's just Kiefer. And he was mentioning that when we write music, even back in the hundreds and hundreds of years ago, maybe Beethoven even, they never wrote music with using music theory. The music theory came from the music. So when we write things, even as worshipers, we're going to write things in a way that is going to be enjoyable and also memorable. But at no point are you going to say to yourself, well, we can't do this because music theory says this. It's like, well, no, actually, if it makes sense in music, or I should say this, if it makes sense to your ear and your heart and your soul and your mind, there's a good chance that the theory will follow. So don't ever be afraid to experiment, try new things. There's another interesting guitar player that I follow on YouTube. I honestly can't remember his name off the top of my head, but he does a lot of like, metal guitar riffs and stuff. But he actually encourages his guys, that he talks to do the same thing. He's like, hey, we know that metal and rock music, or honestly any style, it becomes redundant. Everything has probably already been written. We're just reusing the same things over and over again and just putting our name on it, our brand or our sound. And so with that being said, it's very easy to get caught up in the, this one chord that we end on here, not the one chord, but this chord that we could end on here is it's normal. It's very easy to the ear and the listener to resolve a song this way, or to go to a section by doing this change. And he encourages everyone to just don't do that. Challenge yourself, try to do something different. And then if you obviously can't, you're beating a dead horse, then okay, fine, do what works. But at no point are we going to create new music. At this point, we've written everything that probably will ever be written. It's just a matter of, is it being played by a certain instrument? Is it being played by a computer? Or has it been playing by, live in a live audience? So but yeah, just something to think about. But yes, we had the 3-beat thing in the verse. This is the song that has 3 verses: 1 verse, 2 verse, and 3 verse. So that was funny to me because as I was listening to it, I was like, okay, well, it almost feels like the 3rd verse could actually be like the bridge, sort of. Like, I don't know. It felt like you were already probably 3 to 4 minutes into the song. 9 times out of 10, at least with songs on the radio, like secular music, you've got at 2:30 of a song, you're going into the bridge. And that's kind of, familiar and or common with worship as well. The only thing that we do in worship songs is then we'll extend, the bridge will go on for a long time, and then we'll go back to the chorus, and then maybe, do a tag or another ad lib or some other type of spontaneous thing. But the whole point with this song that I appreciated was, they did go through the motions. They went through all the verse, chorus, verse, chorus, verse, chorus. they do this tag in between the verse 3 and the chorus, but then they go to their bridge and they really build it up. So I put here bridge 2 with 2 different endings instead of making a bridge 3. So yeah, so when I write charts, there's not a lot of times that I try to repeat what looks like the same thing, right? So for example, if bridge 2 says you're going to the 1, the second line you're going to 6 minor to the 4, I don't really feel like it's necessary for me to copy all that again just to change the 4 to a 5. So sometimes what I do when I'm making charts is I'll just parentheses it and I'll put a 5 in between. And that basically just means, hey, either occasionally or every other or the last time, you're gonna, instead of end on the 4, you're gonna end on the 5. And the 5 is like we said before, is a good landing note, a good landing chord to hit when you want to go back to the 1. And it just helps resolve. It wants you to resolve, versus if you land it on the 4, you're still continuing. It's still wanting to go somewhere. And it's ironic that like music can do that. Like you can actually formulate it this way, but it's common. It's very common, and you'll hear it in tons of songs. So, but yeah, Back to Life. Nothing crazy there. Pretty straightforward, other than that, that verse thing and the fact that there's 3 verses. But yeah, second to last, we've got Break Every Chain. Now, this was done at our church for, I believe, like a worship night. So, with that being said, worship nights at our church, they are, as far as music goes, there's so many heads, there's so many cooks in the kitchen, right? To the point where there's probably a place where everyone kind of needs to be on the same page somewhere. And it's a lot easier, I think, to grab from an older worship song that's very congregational and also everyone knows the song. So when you do something like Break Every Chain, yeah, you could play. What's funny is you can see on the chart, it's the same 4 chords the whole time. I don't even put the chords in the sections. I just literally put 6 minor, 4, 1, 5. And there is power in simplicity. Once again, like I said, in our kids ministry, we could actually do this song. Once again, I might actually do the song in kids ministry now. This is great. This is great for me. But you guys can do it too. And so the whole point of this is, hey, you teach your youth kid or even your volunteer, maybe either a elder, who's played guitar his whole life or her life, and they want to get involved in the main service. It's like, hey, okay, cool. We're going to be playing Break Every Chain. We'd love to have you come up and play it. And they're like, okay, cool. What are the chords? You're like, all they are 6 minor, 4, 1, 5. And if you're, good at that, if you're good at, getting others involved, this is a great song to use and to utilize, because at the end of the day, all they have to do is play those 4 chords. Now, granted, that doesn't mean that they're not dynamic. They don't break down. They don't build up. That's not the point. Even if they're not doing that on acoustic or something like that, the whole band can help build those dynamics, and they'll learn the dynamics over time. But another cool thing about doing something like Break Every Chain, which once again is a little older, but also is very congregational, and a lot of people know the song. So there's no question of like, I can worship to this. I can raise my hands, I can shout, I can just praise God. And what I look at it as is it's a great opportunity to also usually like do your own thing. So for example, at the end, I put alt bridge. So an alternative bridge you could do is, I hear those chains falling. I think Tasha Cobbs does that maybe, but I hear those chains falling. So pick a line that resonates with you, that was on your heart that day or was in your devotional, and throw it in there and see what happens. And I've seen a lot of times when you do this kind of thing, it actually might lead to the development of a song. So yes, you're playing the same chords as Break Every Chain, but 9 times out of 10, no one's really going to care if it's a newer melody or if it's a newer word, like a word of God, a word from God. And then 2, you can change the chords, obviously, but then 2, the next section will probably not have those same chords. You might change the melody. You might change, it might be, because this is pretty minor, it starts on the 6 minor, 4-1-5, lands on 6 minor. So it's a very minor sounding song. So, but if you resolved it to the 1, or even went to the 4 and had another section there, whether it's a chorus or a verse, they're not gonna question that, oh yeah, they probably stole that from Break Every Chain. Like, no one's ever gonna think that. So kind of a cool thing to look at for whether it be, your generational ministries worship, or a worship night where you guys can kind of ad lib and figure something else out, figure something new out. Last thing though would be, you do like an intro outro that's more, you know, melodic, something that's different, that leads into the song or leads out of the song. Torin Wells, did I say his name? Yeah. He does those things at the ends of his songs. So they're like, band, take me out. And then they'll do this like thing in like an odd time or something different. And that's cool. So, take those opportunities. If you're a worship leader or a music director, take those opportunities to take something old, remix it, do a mashup, and put it out there and see what happens. So, but yeah, let's get to the last good old song. We've got Build My Life. Originally in G, but we play it in A. Once again, this is not a normal setup for a church. I do pride myself in giving all the resources I can physically think of to give my team and my ministry. And so, by me adding all these different types of charts and MP3s and stuff, just gives you the opportunity to listen to things differently, to obviously use something like the number charts here. A lot of churches don't teach that necessarily, at least not in other ministries like generational ministries, kids, youth, young adults, men's ministry, or even women's ministry. But for main service too, it's kind of common, but not so common that you're going to see that uploaded to like a planning center song file area. So we do like to give this to all our volunteers, just to make sure that they have everything they need and they're just ready for whatever God throws at us, for worship. So but yeah, once again, very straightforward song. It is a good song. I was thinking, if you have a volunteer, you have an up and coming worship leader, and they're maybe asking, hey, I want to show you what I got, and you're like, okay, well, what song can you do, by memory? If you're playing an instrument, you don't have to look at a chart and you can play all the chords. What song is that? And they might say, well, I don't know, I like this song and this song. It's like, okay, well, that's not really our sound, or that's not really what we do in our worship. But try Build My Life. This is a great song to have someone memorize for auditions as well. I don't do auditions really. I just do life with people, and I find places for them to worship and use their talents. But when it comes to this song, there's only one verse, which is kind of cool. So one verse, and you repeat that over and over again, is kind of nice. So that way you don't have to try to think, okay, well, this is in the first verse, and this is the second verse. Some people might say like, oh, well, maybe this, the first little half is the first verse, second verse, but you always do one after another. So it's basically one verse. The funny thing though is they do have 2 different types of choruses. We'll talk about that in a sec. But what did I say here? Great song to play the parts exactly as written. That was another thing too, is like either, like I said, audition, or you're just trying to challenge your volunteers like, hey, this is a song that we're going to do exactly like the record. I want the drum parts to be perfectly in sync, so we can literally play the song over what you're drumming and it looks exactly like the record. Same with the guitar parts, guitar sounds even. A lot of our volunteers use the Helix pedals, and Helix has a great community of musicians that share their music, their patches, the guitar sounds, and you can even buy them too, which is kind of cool. So it not only helps the person using it, but it also helps the person who made it. Gives them a little throwback, like, hey, thanks so much. It's almost like a donation, because at the end of the day, people don't have to do that, but when they do it, it's nice to reciprocate and give them thanks. So, but yeah, this would be a great song for anybody to use as this is like my audition song. This is what I try to do front and back, top to bottom. Everything is exactly like the record. And it just, yeah, helps build the team too, and you can nitpick things and just be mindful though of the fact that, yes, you are going to probably have some people that don't play it exactly right, and there's nothing wrong with that. It's just, it's different. So, but yeah, the last thing was the chorus 2 has a few different changes. So instead of 4 2 minor 1 6 minor, it's 4 2 5. So almost like substituting for the 1, you're going to the 5, and then going back to that 6 minor, then 4 2 minor 5 6, 4 2 minor 1 6. So what we're doing is we're substituting the 1 chord with the 5 chord for the second chorus. So, and then we do bridge out and we're done for the day. Look at that. But yeah, super cool that we're all doing this together in worship and at a church and or in our own communities. If you are a worship leader, you're running a ministry, you've got a whole bunch of volunteers that maybe can't play instruments, or they're just learning how to play their instruments, please use any and all resources that we have through Only Way to Play's little community. We've got tons of different channels, but we also love any recommendations you might have for just how to make your worship better, or at least your volunteers and your teams better. So that's what we're kind of doing here. We're showing what we're doing in-house to represent, what you could do, but at the same time, it's all up to you, however you want to run it, however you want to use it. But seeing what other people do it gives you ideas. It gives you an idea of like, oh, actually, we never tried that. Or, anything that we talk about here is all for the sole purpose of just building up the big C, right? The big church. And I've never been one to shy away from like, oh, I'm not going to share this, or I'm not going to let the inside out of whatever I'm doing. No, I mean, if it helps you, yeah, like, it's more often than not, you could have all the ideas in the world, and most people just want to do what they want to do, which is fine. But for here, it's an exciting time because, with technology, with these easily accessible videos, Word docs, files, whatever, you're able to share all this and give out the information so that other people can benefit. I do the work once, and then other people can benefit it, dozens and dozens of times over. So it's an exciting time to just share how we do worship, how we do church, and hopefully it just blesses you. Hopefully it adds value to you, your team, but obviously in-house too. Our team in Southern California, we do kind of end up at one place every Sunday, but a lot of the guys too play other places, play even secular music and cover bands and with other artists and stuff like that. So it's really cool to see all the different uh, people's journeys and their experiences, what they've encountered through either music in general or worship specifically. And what better place to do it, together than in the church. And so last thing I'll say is we did have a volunteer that mentioned like, oh, it'd be nice to hear from, maybe a professional musician that plays in church a lot. It doesn't have to be like an artist necessarily. It could just be someone who has experience playing with other artists or being at other churches, either mega church, small church, or somewhere in between. And yeah, so that's an opportunity too that we might utilize at some point in the future. Grab somebody from our main sanctuary worship team who's played at a lot of places, has a lot of knowledge, and wants to share it. We can do an interview with them, or even just have them come along in this journey where we go over the songs every week and check them out and listen to them and just talk about them. It's not really a behind the song kind of thing, even though we might share ideas or share things that we've heard. But yeah, at the end of the day, it's just super cool to have this opportunity to share this with you guys. And yeah, hopefully it blesses you. Have a great rest of your day, night, evening, morning, and we'll see you next time. Later.